it seems that we've come to a point where there's a sort of a crisis as far as the affordability of health care in this country, in the United States. So, yeah, like the affordability issue, it's coming to a head, it seems, whereby with Obamacare, that's becoming too expensive. But we can't go back to the previous model where people would get turned down due to pre-existing conditions. And then even with so many, even with the subsidies, Obamacare subsidies, going back to the pre-pandemic model, it's becoming extremely expensive. So a lot of people are just going to forego with health insurance, and then as a result, a lot of people the prices for those that do have it, or those who do tend to be the people that really need it, so that the cost is just going to go so much higher for them. Yeah. So what is the solution? And one proposal is, well, just do away with all of them, all the past models, and just go to a completely public solution, which I agree, which is that is the best solution. Public Medicare for all, but have it as 100% Medicare for all, none of this 80% stuff. Coverage, 100% coverage, Medicare for all. Hospital, medicines, medical devices, everything covered completely. Now, of course, that raises the question of, well, how is the government? We're already $30 trillion in debt as a nation. How are we possibly going to be able to afford covering everything? 100% coverage, Medicare for all, for everybody, 100%. I agree that would be a problem if we continue with the current model of medicine when it comes to prescription medical coverage. Now, this would be for prescription medicine, not for over the counter. And I say that because that is where the solution lies, is to forego completely the whole idea of relying on the marketplace to determine the costs of the products, drugs, and medical devices. It is obvious that the whole competitive market, using that for price discovery, is a complete and utter failure when it comes to prescription medicine. Where, on the other hand, for over-the-counter medicines and medical devices, drugs and medical devices, over-the-counter, so that would be medical products that do not require a prescription. The marketplace, the market model of commerce works relatively well. By that I mean it's a competitive marketplace where the customer can go to the pharmaceutical department of a grocery store, or they go to the drugstore, and they can choose all either medical devices such as thermometers, blood pressure monitors, and what have you, or they can find non-prescription drugs of all sorts of variety, and they can usually find them at a fairly reasonable price and fairly adequate supply for either of those kind of medical devices or medicines in the over-the-counter market, because the competitive marketplace works fairly well, where if one vendor, manufacturer doesn't provide an adequate price, there's going to be another competitor that should provide an equal product at a better price that the customer is going to be able to afford. And I can afford that, and buy the product. Take the product to the counter and buy it. But that's just not necessarily. That's very often not the case when it comes to prescription drugs and medical devices. There, it's a matter of how much how much price gouging the manufacturer can get away with both in terms of medications and drugs and medical devices. So there's no decent amount of competition that can control the price of the product. Especially if they're like hospitalized patients, they don't get to decide what they may be unconscious or whatever. They're inpatient. They don't get this. They don't have like a glossy brochure where they can decide what kind of implant do they get or what medications they're getting. They just get all pumped. Get pumped. Get the IVs or whatever medication that their doctor orders and whatever in surgery, whatever implant the surgeon puts in, and they're on the hook to pay for them, whether it's whether it's through their insurance company or if it's their own out-of-pocket coverage. So there's no and also if the prescription medicine is still under patent protection, then the vendor or the manufacturer gets to have monopoly profits. There's absolutely no competition if it's still under patent protection. But the thing is, with prescription medicine, that's best described as a vital utility, much like electricity or the gas that heats your home and the water, and it's those. There's a recognition with basic utilities is that there necessarily are monopolies. There's no way to have a competitive marketplace where vendors can compete with the customers for the business. And so because that's recognized, there's like here in Minnesota we have a Public Utilities Commission that decides how much a utility company can charge, and they also require that they demand that the utility provider provides the adequate amount of that product, such as electricity or natural gas, to the homes. And they say, so it's the government that dictates how much the vendor can charge, and also dictates requires how much supply the utility company has to provide for the customer. So they're not allowed to say, the vendor of the utility company can't just say, sorry, we didn't have enough electricity supply. Oops. If that happens, they're in trouble. They might lose their ability to provide the services altogether to the state. So they have to still provide adequate supply, and they have to they only can charge as much as the Public Utilities Commission allows them to charge. But in the case of medicines, then it's a matter of it's a free for all. It's how much the drug companies and big med tech medical device manufacturers, how much they can get away with charging. Without regard to how well the customer can afford it, either through their insurance company, private pay, or through the government in the case of Medicare. There's no regard for that, how affordable the product is, nor is there any regard for whether it's manufacturers can provide an adequate supply to meet the needs of the patients. So there's a disconnect there. There's not a realization that the medical field is really, especially the prescription drug and medical devices field, how that is effectively a utility that is a necessary and vital utility for the population. Instead, it's treated as just like any other where the competitive marketplace does work relatively well, such as for food we more or less rely on grocery stores. There, that is a competitive marketplace, but of course, the food is expensive, but it's too expensive. But it's still generally within reason for most people. But and that's also the case with, like I said, with over-the-counter medications. The prices are relatively reasonable, but because the competitive forces that govern the competitive marketplace generally works more or less to ensure relatively fair prices for the consumer. But I'm trying to argue that that's not the case when it comes to prescription medicine, especially if in patent-protected medications, and in the case for inpatients in the hospital, there's pretty much little to no competitive marketplace for the consumer to be able to choose a lower priced supplier. So I think we can call it that is a relying on the marketplace. A competitive marketplace is to provide the necessary services to the citizenry, the customers. It's a failed model because it's a utility, and it is the responsibility of the government to provide utilities, make sure utilities are provided to the people at an adequate supply at a reasonable price. But the marketplace is not working in the prescription medical field. So what happens there? Well, either have to turn to the Public Utilities Commission model that regulates and dictates how much the pharmaceutical and medical device manufacturers, how much they can charge, and requires them to provide an adequate supply. Or we have to turn to a model where the government becomes the supplier, the manufacturer. Effectively, they own the means of production of the prescription, most of the prescription drugs and medical devices. I think that may be necessary. I don't know that it's such a complicated field that it'd be much more difficult to manage all these different drug companies and medical device manufacturers in the same way a utilities commission can regulate just a handful of energy companies, say, and utility providers. So I think it might have to be the case where we have to switch over to a model where the government owns a majority of owns and operates the majority of the pharmaceutical companies and medical device manufacturers. I think we're going to have to switch to that model, because that's the only way that we can ensure that prices and supply are all adequate, really fair prices are met, and adequate supply is also met of pharmaceuticals and medical devices. So this goes back to my argument, is that capitalism is not a system. That's just the activity of trying to engaging in the activity of trying to get a profit out of a business, where you're trying to buy either a fully made product or the raw materials for a product and make it, and then end up selling that product for more than all the costs you put into either manufacturing or acquiring the product in the first place. And so that's capitalism, when you're trying to realize a gain on a business activity. But it's not a socioeconomic system. a socioeconomic system is a way of governing the economy of a society. That's a socioeconomic system. Capitalism is just a business activity. And so if you're going to organize a socioeconomic system that works ideally, you just need to look at, well, how much can we rely on? If we can rely on people engaging in capitalism to provide the needed goods and services for society, then fine, we can do that, such as in the case with over-the-counter non-prescription drugs and medical devices, or in the case of food, in the case of groceries, where we can rely on people engaging in the activity of capitalism to provide the needed goods and services for a society, then fine, we can rely on that, organize this as a socioeconomic system that does rely on it for those, more or less relies on it for those goods and services, and that's those sectors. But where the people engaging in the activity of capitalism cannot be relied upon, which is the case with prescription drugs and medical devices, where that we cannot rely on people engaging in capitalism to provide the needed goods and services to meet the needs of society at fair prices and adequate supply. Then we have to turn to the public sector to provide those goods and services. Now, for those who argue that the government cannot do that, I would point to areas where the government does a decent job currently and in the past. They do a decent job of providing, making roads and maintaining roads, bridges, parks, and also in the past, the government also has done some amazing achievements, namely the landing a man on the moon with the Apollo program, and also with the Manhattan Project, making a nuclear bomb. Now, setting aside the ethics of actually using a nuclear bomb, just the technology, the science of the technology and the work that went into making a nuclear bomb with in the Manhattan Project. That was a government project. The Manhattan Project was, and it was just an amazing achievement given the technology available at the time. And the same goes for the Apollo program. That is also an amazing achievement. It was a government program, a non-profit. There's no capitalism. It was not a capitalism driven. It was not profit driven, nor was the Manhattan program project. So both of those are amazing achievements that done by the government. So if the government sets its mind to it, they can do real good work, and I think they could do an excellent job here as well in providing drugs and medical devices. And also, there's people also might counter argument might be that won't be an incentive to innovate, but I would counter that argument by pointing out that the only incentive the capitalists have when it comes to innovating in big pharma and big medtech is to make a profit, make more money. That's their only incentive. That's it. Full stop. That's their obligation to their shareholders, is to look after the financial interests of the shareholders, not the patients. Their legal obligation is to look after the shareholders' financial interests, not the patient's interests. So, but where if it was the government program, then there would be a legal obligation to look after the patients' interests, and also it's not the accountants and the executives that are doing any medical innovating that would be in the patient's interests. It is the scientists and researchers that are doing the innovating, and so, but they're held back by the big pharma interests of the executives who are looking after shareholders, because if they innovate, if the scientists innovate in ways, researchers innovate in ways that actually help the patients, but are against the interest, counter to the interests of the shareholders, then it will be incumbent on the executives to squelch any of that research, because the executives are looking after the shareholders, so they have to decide with the shareholders, not the patients, that would benefit from any true medical innovation. That's the problem. That's the other problem with relying on for-profit medical research, is that they're not looking to find ways to help patients. They're just trying to look for ways to make money. And if their current medical medications and devices are providing a huge gravy train of profits, they're not going to want to change that with replacing it by some new breakthrough treatment that doesn't cost much. They cannot be patented, which is the case with like herbs, for instance, and other substances, or maybe the ones that are already out of patent protection, that it could be used in new novel ways. So they're not going to want to. Their interest would be to suppress those any kind of breakthrough treatments or cures if they replace the gravy train profit-making treatments. So as a result, but with the government program, the mandate would be to help the patients in terms of innovate in ways that help they could actually direct the researchers to find new innovative ways to find treatments that actually help the patients without regard to any kind of financial benefit to any shareholders. There would be nothing like that. The only shareholders would be the people, that is the patients in this country, in America. So that would actually be a great improvement also. So that's what I think. Or I can't conceive of any other possible solution is than complete, almost total takeover of the medical prescription medical field by the public sector, and that's I think that would be the ideal thing to do. That would be the best solution. I'm open to any other ideas. But given all the that's what I'm saying. I mean, given what kind of crisis we are having as far as the costs of medicine and insurance, and how much it's costing individuals, people going into medical bankruptcy, and the cost of insurance is going through the roof for those that do have that, and also how much it's costing the government through Medicare. And then I was just talking about the perverse incentive with a for-profit model is to benefit shareholders, even if it's against the interests of the health of the patients, with the for-profit model. So yeah, I definitely believe that the prescription medical field needs to be taken over by the public sector, and I think that would be real beneficial in so many different ways for society. So I guess that's all I have to say for now. If you're still watching and listening, thanks for watching.